Oh, yeah. Getting the groove on. Getting the groove on. Hello, everybody. I like that music. Chad picked that out. That right there was baby making music, Chad. That is some great tune that you picked out for that. Anyway, welcome to Humpday Happy Hour with Dentists in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. We are live, and we are over a much-needed glass of wine tonight, or whatever your favorite cocktail or beverage is. We have a great show for you tonight. First of all, our new educational partner, Formlabs, is behind tonight's show, and they are helping to sponsor it. They also help to introduce us to our guest, Dr. Lisa Alvetro, who is an orthodontist who has been deep into digital workflows for her orthodontic practice. So we're really excited to talk to her about what she's doing with the Formlabs 3D printing setup that she has at her office. I am joined by two of the best people in the entire world, Dr. Chad Duplantis and Dr. Jennifer Bell. I'll bet they didn't think I was going to say it was them, but anyway, they're here to join me as usual.
Kind of shocking, really.
We are all dentists. We are all business owners, and we are all. Did I say we are all dentists? I mixed up my order tonight. How about that?
I like the spicy. Spice it up.
We're all dentists. We're all educators, and we're all practice owners. And our job is to bring all of you in the know. So, my friends, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Great to have the band back together.
Is it rainy and gloomy and like kind of springish late winter where you live right now? Because it is here.
I wouldn't know. I really haven't seen outdoors.
Oh, your skin color would suggest the same.
Exactly. Thank you.
Your lack of vitamin D is consistent with your story.
Yeah. Is there yellow showing here?
Yeah.
I put the glasses on to cover the yellow and the sclera. So,
guys, it's so cold and rainy here.
Really?
Is it really cold?
It was in the 50s last night.
That's crazy. It actually has been pretty warm here.
That's cold.
Especially for almost June.
Yeah, that's cold.
Anywho.
So do I really look that pale? I am looking really pale. I got to fix my camera.
I can't tell if it's jaundice or pale. It's a tough call here.
Yeah, I need some filters.
Yeah.
Anyone out there?
I think JB is looking at something different because I don't see you as pale, Jeff.
Okay. Well, I love you too, Chad.
Oh.
But guess what happened today? So,
tell me.
Remember we talked last week about how my trip to the ADSM, the Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine meeting ended in the fiasco of someone stealing my cell phone, which is also my wallet. and got my new cell phone and everything, which I was kind of stoked about. iPhone 16, a terabyte with all this storage, and Mac Daddy phone, you know.
With
And,
giant print.
Guess what? Not giant print. Thank you again. But I had my other phone for how many years and nothing ever happened. Today, this fell down, and with a protective case fell down, and I guess a stone fell right in the bottom of it. And my phone is less than a week old and now needs to be replaced.
Shut up.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, can you just do a little virtual tour of the case of that phone?
Yeah. Can we see that?
Yeah. Okay. So here's.
You put your wallet back on there?
I did.
I feel like once bitten, twice shy, my friend.
But listen, I already gave the explanation because I had the other one for a couple of years and never left my phone, never left my wallet, right? Mm-hmm. Combining them was really a good thing. The bonehead that I pulled last week was that I didn't realize that setting my phone on the bar was also setting my wallet on the bar, which I never would have done. But now I realize that, and I will never lay my phone on the bar.
So it has like 99% efficacy.
Yeah. But Hannah immediately replaced my iPhone case with the exact replica of the one that I had. So I got my new driver's license today. Got a few of my credit cards back, not all of them.
So Jeff's old phone case used to look something like this. And hello? Hey, this is Jeff Horowitz. Hey, what's up? Oh, hold on just a second. Let me get my American Express out.
Is that a bag phone?
Yeah, it's a bag phone. And I would put it in my back. I would put it in my back pocket, but it caused back problems. Like
fair.
It's new from Toomey. It's the J Horowitz collection.
Yeah. Also a core workout.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, how's your week been? I mean, things been going good for you?
Yeah. Are you guys feeling like a little slow, or is it just me?
Dude, I'm so glad to hear that because this morning I literally sat on my ass.
I'm not going bankrupt yet.
Yeah.
And this time of year is always when the kids are getting ready to get out of school is always kind of chaotic. So, with cancellations, no shows, things like that.
Yeah. It's been steady, but not crazy, and definitely not packed. So,
yeah.
But I always tell young dentists, we actually, I'll probably be talking more about this over the next few weeks, but we actually hired a new associate who's joining us on July the 7th. She just graduated from dental school last week. Kind of excited about this, but she came today to shadow and just kind of see what was going on. And it happened to be like the most dead day we've had in like 3 months,
And she's over there looking at her contract going, I'm paying on production.
And she was
usually isn't like this. But hey, we're doing something a little bit different, and I will gladly share it with the group. I'm really excited about the program that we kind of put together for this associate and how it's going to kind of go from school to practice life. And maybe in a few months, so we'll have a case study and we can get her on here to tell us what
so she probably didn't feel so bad about the dentistry she did in dental school when she saw your dentistry, right?
She'll feel really good about herself, actually.
Yeah. No. But good gosh, I heard some stories about dental school tonight, and I don't know that I want to share them, but gee whiz, there's some crazy stuff going on in dental school these days. And I actually have a news story that I want to share with you all after JB gives her news tonight too.
Oh, Dan.
You have a news segment, Chad?
No, I don't have a segment by any means whatsoever, but I found something like literally right before we went on the air that I want to share. So
okay.
Hey, really quick, Chad, on your associate topic, because this is a hot discussion point. If you feel comfortable talking about it, fine. If you don't, then don't. But are you doing a guarantee for a period of time to give her an opportunity to sort of build up? Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're going to do something crazy. we're gonna start with one solid clinical day and increase those days over the first 3 months, so that she has the opportunity to meet new patients. Now, that's not saying that the other days that she's there that she can't do any dentistry, but it's like, we're going to book one solid day. We're going to let her meet new patients. We're going to let her do hygiene exams. Like today, since we knew that she was going to be a part of our team, we walked her around and introduced her to all the patients that were there. And I kind of came up with this idea as to how we're going to introduce it, and I'll put the formula together. But I'm really excited. She's really excited. Dr. Kirkham, my business partner, is really excited. I think it's going to be a great approach to how we do it. And I think it's just going to be a wonderful transition.
Always love to hear innovative new business practices. So yeah, please keep us posted on that. But if you've got a new segment, Chad, we better let JB get to her new segment.
Yeah, we better.
I
know how chatty he is.
I don't have a segment. I have a news story.
That's but at the speed at which you talk, your story will be a segment.
That's true.
There's so many things I could say.
All right, team. Well, I have a slight update from last week. We did an all-call.
I was dismissing him too. How you doing, JB?
Are we done now? Okay. We had an all-call update last week, alerting you all of the big, beautiful bill and the pass-through entity tax exemption that was in there, was protecting you from the SALT cap, which capped how much of your state and local taxes that you could write out of your entity. That was a big deal. Well, the bill passed maybe 12 hours after we ran the story. They did increase the SALT cap from 10,000 to 40,000, which should move the needle for most states. I think it still could be a concern for very expensive states like California, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Illinois, where we know the tax liabilities are much higher. So 40,000 may not still be enough, but we'll be interested to see. It passed the House, so now it's moving on to the Senate. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into that bill because it's super nuanced. And obviously, if it's a big, beautiful bill, there's a lot of pages, as they love to throw a lot of things into these packages. So let's talk about a few things that will impact dentists and dental students that we need to be paying attention to. The first was the Student Success and Taxpayer Savings Plan. That introduced significant changes to the federal student loan program, which will impact medical and dental students. If enacted, that bill would eliminate the Grad Plus loan program. Now, this program would restrict access to federal loans for graduate and professional students beginning in 2026 to 27 academic year, and for current students starting in 29 to 2030. This is kind of a big deal because it allows medical and dental students to secure federal loans for tuition and living expenses. This bill would impose a borrowing cap of $150,000 on federal loans for professional educational programs and exclude medical and dental residency from the definition of qualifying jobs under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, I myself benefited from that very definition because I did my residency program as a paid job with the Veterans Hospital, and that would no longer qualify. This could be a pretty big financial impact. I'm sort of torn a little bit on this particular part of the bill. Number one, because part of me wants to support this, because part of me thinks, well, if we restrict the ability to access money, then maybe, just maybe, we would actually see dental schools reset the tuition liabilities back to some normalized ratio to these dental students, something that is more commensurate with their income potential. These $500,000, $750,000 student loan debts to go to dental school might be slightly out of bounds. Yeah, I said it. So I am a little bit, playing devil's advocate, I guess, to say, I would hate to see these programs go because I think that it's a real opportunity for dental students and medical students to be able to continue to further their education, take the loans out that they need to be able to provide care back to their communities. But at the same time, if there's not a blank check of forgiveness sitting at the other end of this docket, maybe, just maybe, dental schools will be forced to look at how they're structuring their programs and what the cost of those programs will be. And if the students simply cannot get funded to attend, then for the first time, we may actually see dental student loan requirements go down. Maybe that's just me being positive in a world of lemons. I don't know. But maybe this is the first movement that will be required in order. It'll either be demand and the lack of people wanting to go to dental school because it's frankly too expensive to go, or it will be they cannot get funded. They cannot take these $500,000, $750,000 loans out by the federal government in order to attend dental school. I don't know. I'm torn. I can see both sides of this, but I think it's an interesting debate. In addition, we're seeing a lot of activity around fluoride. I don't think that's going to go away. I think we're going to continue to see that for a while yet. On May 22nd of this year, MAHA released its first preliminary report. It targeted the 4 pillars it believes to be responsible for an unhealthy American population: poor diet and ultra-processed foods, environmental chemicals, lack of physical activity and chronic stress, and over-medicalization. Fluoride was also mentioned along with microplastics and PFASs, those long-term plastic chemicals, as also chemicals that may be impacting children's health. So who's to say where this is going? We do see activity on fluoride supplementation. Those medications are likely to be pulled from the shelves, where they will not be available to prescribers any longer in unfluoridated communities, which is also changing because we're going to start to see an uptick in those unfluoridated communities. Many municipalities now have it on the docket for discussion. Florida and Utah are leading the way from a state mandate, and they are allowing the removal of fluoride from their water system. And with that, that's the news. Can't wait to hear what Chad has to say.
Well, y'all ready for this?
Ready.
Okay. Hey, folks. I'd like to share with you my news segment tonight. It's not very beneficial, but a couple of things that I'd like to say is, first of all, Dentists in the Know had their first webinar last week with Dr. Joy Piscosin. It was a fantastic webinar. If you didn't see it, I will tell you that I ran out today and I bought 2 different types of fluoride for my practice. So how exciting is that? But more importantly, this is actually the news that I was going to share. We have a friend within the industry, Dr. D'Angelo Webster, who runs the group Practice Biopsy. And so Dr. Webster came up with a plan that he was going to offer one ASDA student a year a scholarship to buy a practice or start a practice upon graduation. He was going to do it for 0% compensation, no compensation whatsoever to his platform in benefiting practices or benefiting himself. However, the letter that he got back from ASDA stated, "We want to thank you for your patience in bringing this opportunity to our attention. I met with the executive committee regarding your scholarship offer to an ASDA student. Unfortunately, at this time, your collaboration does not align with our current goals and priorities. Therefore, we are not able to fulfill the request at this time. We wish you the best with the program." I read that before we went on air tonight, and I hate to say this, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It really pissed me off. Because one of the things that Dr. Webster brings up, and I won't mention them by name, but there is a very large DSO and a very large insurance company that was mentioned that is allowed to offer lunch and learns and provide money for the students through ASDA. Yet the scholarship of a very willing individual to help somebody upon graduation start practices is declined. I'm sorry, folks. What's wrong with dentistry? That's wrong with dentistry. That's a big problem that we have. Somebody's trying to, out of the goodness of their heart, help somebody start their career in dentistry that has been involved with organized dentistry from an early age and they're declined, that's a problem.
That's nuts.
And that's my news.
Where did you read that?
Dr. Webster posted it on Practice Biopsy, and I called him a friend, but he's another. He runs another Facebook group. He runs actually a pretty fantastic Facebook group. That just broke my heart. That really just broke my heart. And to hear that they're going to decline that opportunity from somebody willing to help a dentist get started in their career and not asking for anything in return.
Do you believe that they might have gotten pressure from maybe those other entities that you were mentioning?
I didn't mention any other entities, did I?
Well, you did, like the DSOs.
Yes. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't mention anybody by name.
No, you were not specific. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it baffles me, It always baffles me when you try to give with nothing expected in return and you're declined. That always baffles me. So
interesting.
I found that interesting. I'm sorry. That really wasn't a news segment, but I thought it was a news story. But
it is a news story.
Yeah, it is a news story, but it was indeed a segment, Chad.
Yeah. I made it a segment just because y'all teased me about making it a segment. I just had to do it. I just had to go Ron Burgundy on y'all. Hey, anyways, sorry. We have a guest waiting. Should we introduce our guest?
Let's do it.
That.
As I always say, I can't do two things at once. Jeff, JB, you bring her up.
I'm on the trigger.
And I am going to go ahead and introduce our guest. Tonight, I'm very excited because we're talking about 3D printing in particular from Formlabs, which is a fantastic 3D printing company. But our guest tonight has been an orthodontist for over 30 years. She's experienced amazing advances in technology that have enhanced the patient experience and improved treatment outcomes. I love this next part of her bio. She says, although I am not a techie person personally, I am considered an innovator and early adopter of technology in the ortho space. That cracks her up, and you know what? That cracks me up too. She chairs the Committee on Technology for the American Academy of Orthodontics, and in the office, they try to create an impactful patient experience. And you can see that on her website, alvetro.com. with her Africa family-friendly themed office. Now, this is another special part of her bio. Tanzania, Africa is special to her and her team because of the charity that she founded that works with and I'm probably not going to say this correctly, but Nakende, Tanzania, working to improve the lives of those in the village through well projects, farming, safe housing, education, and community outreach. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, Dr. Lisa Alvetro, who practices in Sydney. Let's put another shrimp on the bobby, Ohio, for the past 30 years. It's wonderful to have you, Dr. Alvetro.
Wow. Hey, thanks for the opportunity to share. And I'll tell you, Sydney, Ohio is not like Sydney, Australia. Sydney, Ohio is a very small kind of rural community, but sometimes we do get confused. So. But I just really look forward to sharing with you and my experience. So,
where is that compared to Versailles, which I got to go to?
You did? You know what? We're about 15 miles.
Wow,
it's so close.
Okay.
It's very, very close.
I mean, I just said that because I went there last year. I didn't expect you to be that close.
Oh,
that's where the mid-mark.
Yes.
They basically are that town, but it was cool. We flew into that little regional airport and stayed at a downtown, hotel that I guess Midmark had purchased and fixed up. It was really very quaint, really cool place.
It really is. They are an amazing company, and their leadership is just really something to aspire to. So, we know them well.
Let's talk in layman's terms. What's your closest big city?
Columbus. Maybe about an hour and a half from Columbus, 3 hours from Cleveland. So,
Okay.
So we're not.
Now I got you.
not quite as isolated as Versailles, but
Yeah.
that's where they had to fly in. So,
Well, very good. Very good.
I want to know, I want to hear your journey. I want to know, I mean, you can start from the very beginning if you want, and maybe student loan for your dental career is a part of that conversation after tonight's story, but would love to know a little bit about your practice style. And then obviously you're here because you've adopted 3D printing technology and you've kind of seen what that's done in your practice. And I'd love to know that journey.
Boy, a little bit about my journey. I've been in private practice now a little over 30 years, and started really as a small practice and kind of grew, and really integrating all that technology really helped. But I really have a very close relationship with all of my staff. I used to say they're like my sisters. Now as I'm getting older, they're like my children.
Yeah.
It's kind of changed a little bit.
Yeah. When you say grandchildren, it's time to retire.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. He said either that or when I get scary, somebody in the staff has to tell me, okay, it's time to go home, Lisa. But talking about the student loans, I know myself coming out the burden of a student loan because I financed all my education, and I think sometimes when people get into that situation, they can make really poor choices because they're forced to, and I feel bad for, and it does break my heart that there's a colleague trying to help another one, because I think part of it to protect dentistry is some of us that are established have to help bring the next ones along. And maybe that's financial support, or when you sell your practice, being the bank, something so that they don't kind of get caught up in that corporate world. And the thing is too, I think you miss out on the benefits that we all feel when you're in private practice. It's the personal relationships. It's being able to make the right decisions because this person, not because you have to make a number because someone's telling you need to. So, that's such a disappointing announcement that you made. And boy, what a gesture someone to make to be able to do that. But, a little bit about my journey, I'm practicing in a rural area, and I always kind of had the fear that we were falling behind. And that's really what kind of got us into the digital realm really early. We thought everybody was doing it here. Nobody was doing it. It's and it started probably about maybe 15-20 years ago. I started working for a couple different companies as far as their R&D for different orthodontic companies, so I got a lot of exposure internationally too when I was teaching and seeing what people were doing. So when we started looking at going digital again, we thought everyone was doing it. We had all these pieces of equipment and nothing played together. We had a scanner, we had a printer, we had software, and everyone's like, well, it should work. And nothing actually did. So I love to share that with people. And seriously, I'm not a tech person. And I like to tell the story. I was giving a lecture, and I got a new cell phone, and I couldn't shut it off. I had no idea. I called my son, and I said, how do I shut off my cell phone? I'm about ready to give a lecture. And he goes, what are you lecturing on? I said, technology. So, it's one of those things I think people can be afraid of, but it has done so much to enhance my practice and to really keep us current and really have people, seeking treatment when they have, they have other options. So that's kind of, my journey.
How long have you had a printer? I know you said you've had it for a while, and I'm just curious.
Probably our first one was, a little over 12 years ago.
That is pretty cool. Was it a filament printer, or was it a DLP, or?
It was actually, hey, are you allowed to say a company name here or something?
Of course you can. Yeah.
Okay. I won't say district, but it was one of the, Envision Tech was really one of the first printers that came into like dentistry and orthodontics. And, it was huge, and it was, the desktop version was still $25,000, maybe more. I think it came in, and I bought it, and we didn't know what to do with it. I love to shop. And I have a friend who says I buy 3D printers like women buy shoes and purses, because at any one time I usually have about 10 or 12 in the lab that we're doing some testing with, or just playing around with a chocolate printer. But we got this printer, and I tell my staff this is what I bought, because again, the salesperson told me everybody was doing this. Here it turns out they weren't. We ended up taking a class at a bar. There was this little bar in Dayton that was, you could go there, drink, learn to 3D print, and then work on circuitry. It was like where the people from Big Bang Theory would hang out. I mean, we got there.
Yeah.
We got there like, we're here to take the class at the Proto Print Bar. So that's how I learned to print. And I learned to print a lot of it on YouTube from people, because a lot of people weren't printing then. So I learned a lot of software from manufacturing. Guys who were printing, little Dungeons and Dragons things taught me how to, how to print. So it was really cumbersome then too. It was more expensive. It was, a lot of failures. It was, a lot of cleaning up and trial and error. So we've been at it quite a while.
What were you printing back then?
Mainly here's kind of how my story went too. And part of the reason I wanted to start printing is I knew I wanted to start doing clear aligner therapy, but I didn't want to outsource it. I wanted to keep it in, because all the dentists in the area were doing a lot of Invisalign, and I didn't want to get into trying to prove I'm better than this person or that person, and then people almost start to see it as a commodity. So I knew I had to do something different. And at that time, there wasn't any other aligner company options out there. We started using software from a company in France, because there really wasn't anything available quite in the US. So that was really our main push, was to be able to print models, to be able to do in-house aligners. So we've been doing in-house aligners probably 10 years now.
Would you just do the aligner and then vacuum form Essex or with Drew format or something like that?
Yeah, that's what we were, doing. And one thing that's really coming on now, just recently, is direct printing aligners. And that's one thing you can do with a Formlabs printer. Instead of having to print the model and use a thermoform, you can directly print the aligner itself.
Can you talk about can you talk about that? Because I get that question a ton when I lecture as well. Talk about, we're going to get super technical. Talk about the types of resins you have to have, the type of software you have to have. What does that workflow look like for you in your office from, you're basically building your own ClinCheck and then laying out how that goes.
Yeah. And when you're talking about, and do we want to talk directly about direct print aligners or just the kind of traditional thermoform?
Either way.
Go for it.
Yeah,
either way, workflow especially.
Yeah, if you're going to be doing a traditional thermoform, and there's a lot of different options out there now for design software that are really, you can teach yourself so quick to use, and some of the ones I think that are very popular, like your ULab, your 3Shape, Blue Sky Bio, Titan. And what you have to look for too, based on how many aligners you're going to do, some of them you're going to pay per export. Say if I do a case and there's maybe 20 aligners, I'll pay a price for every one of those STL files. There's some that are priced per case. So if I start a patient, every time I even use that patient, it's still one price for that patient. So in bigger cases, that's going to really work out. Or there's some that you can do a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription, and it's unlimited, just go for it. So you kind of have to look at that. All of them work. Some of them are easier to use, but any one that you pick and learn is going to work for you. And then, once you take that and then export that, if you're going to be doing a traditional format, you're just going to print the model. So maybe you have 10 models you're going to be printing. One of the printers we like to print those models on is our Form 4B, because you can get, based on the arch side, 10 or 11 models in about 8-9 minutes. So, that's really quick.
That's really fast.
And it has really nice software, because once you take and batch them and put them in, the software, which didn't exist before when we just started out. If you didn't have it just right, it failed. And sometimes you didn't even know what you did wrong. But a lot of the software now is so intuitive, it won't even let you start it. If there's a problem, They're like, it'll alert you, like, don't do it, don't push print. So, that's really one of the things, is being able to produce those models. And then from that point, if you're just doing a traditional part, then you can, suck down. And there's so many different types of plastic available too. And each of those plastics have a little bit of a different material properties to them. And so once you kind of pick that material you're going to use, it then helps you when you're doing your setup part. Like, how much rotation can I get? Am I going to do 2 degrees of rotation per aligner and maybe 0.25, linear movements or torquing movements? So I think when we're trying to teach people how to do this, there needs to be, consistency. Pick one set until you really learn it, and then you also have to kind of keep all those steps in place. And we use a simple spreadsheet like Smartsheet, where you could even do it like in Google Docs. Smartsheet's really nice because you just set up columns, and when a step is completed, who does that? They click it and it notifies the next person. Because, you've got to delegate some of this. Once you learn how to do it yourself, then you start delegating, even to the point where, those initial models are segmented, and then maybe the initial like clean check is set up, and then I jump in and I can tweak it. Then I push it off to the person who's going to be doing printing.
So let me ask you a question about that part of the workflow, because obviously the first thought that comes to mind is with regard to attachments, and there are lots of different theories on best attachment uses and whether or not they're actually needed based on the plastic, or based on whether you go up and actually anchor off of bone, if you actually run up onto the gingiva. So did you start designing your own attachment formats at the beginning, or how did you work your way in? And how does a dentist that's getting into this, maybe not an orthodontist with all that understanding of moments and things like that, how does someone get the knowledge of, what is the best attachment to use here, without it just being a long-term trial and error?
Yeah. I think one of the easiest ways to think about attachments are, the attachment's going to be for retention or for movement. And we use one shape of attachment, and it's like a wedge. And the position that you put that wedge, it can either be pushing or can be retention. And the easiest rule of thumb is horizontal attachments will do vertical movements. Vertical attachments will do horizontal movements. And that way too, if you're having your staff fill those, they know what shape they're going for. I know, like, different aligner companies have all these little fancy ones. I mean, really with aligners, you're just trying to get hold of that tooth. And certain movements you really going to need to put attachments. But some of the resins that we're using now that you directly print have a shape memory to them. So when you start looking at shape memory materials, you might not need attachment. And really kind of the difference is, if you have like your thermoform plastic, is really rigid, has maybe a little bit of elasticity to it. Some of the materials now that you directly print, that we can print on our form printer, have a shape memory to them. So when you get them warm, they're really soft. The consistency reminds me, if you take an aligner and you heat it from shape memory, it feels like a gummy worm. It feels just like a gummy worm. And then when you put it in, it then goes ahead and comes back, and then provides that. So with this, because here's the thing with aligners too, that you have to be able to grip the tooth, but teeth that have undercuts, particularly maybe adults that have recession, you're going to have to block out, or they're not going to get that rigid plastic around it. So even to manufacture it, you have to block it out. But now here's the thing, you've blocked out, so you don't have as much grip on the tooth. So with some of the direct print aligners, I think design is even easier, because you don't have to block out, just heat it up. You're not going to have to use an attachment because you can grip on the tooth. So some of that shape memory material, I think, has a lot of promise.
It's the nickel titanium of plastics, huh?
Exactly. And the thing is too, when you're when you're vacuum forming something, it depends how thick. It's not a consistent thickness, because maybe angulation or where you have it on the build platform, or even sometimes how hot your machine's gotten after being used.
Heat distribution for sure. Yeah.
So now if you direct print, you can control that thickness. And what you can also even do is to go ahead and vary the thickness. Maybe you're going to need more pressure in one place. So before you export it, you bulk that area up a little bit. So, that's one of the things, and, from a standpoint, like for dentists, one of the things where I think being able to do in-house aligners would be so easy and so effective pre-prosthetic. When you're, someone comes in and like, oh, I want veneers, and maybe you've got too much space here, a little space here. And then when you do it, they're like, well, this one's not exactly like that one. I'm like, well, of course it's not, look where you started. So because that kind of thing, once you take that scan and you get it in and you're designing your aligners, you can make sure that if you want those lateral incisors, 8, 10 mil, however you want it, you can measure it and get it to there. So, and we were just having this discussion. There was an adult patient who came in and he's like, well, I think I need to line up my bottom teeth because my dentist wants to do some work on the top. And I'm like, well, of course you do, because you want completely straight teeth on the top and you're going to have crooked teeth on the bottom. Explain to me how that's going to fit. I mean, you guys, ladies, will really struggle with, you've got these lower teeth that are like this, but you can't make the top teeth look like that. So, I think
on your lip line.
yeah. So I think for dentistry, pre-prosthetics, being able to, hey, let's do a scan. And the thing is too, if you're going to be lining, you can line things up. It's going to help you plan where you want the occlusion, what kind of clearance you're going to want for your restoration. And the thing is too, when you do them in-house and printing yourself, the cost can be so much lower. If you're looking at outsourcing it, you've got your lab bill, what they're going to charge for you, and then you're going to have to pass that on to your patient who maybe you're already looking at doing a lot of restorative work. This way you can wrap, your in-house aligner system in, and you're going to get a better result. They're going to like it. So I think it's just really helpful for pre-prosthetics.
Okay. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. So I outsource it. I get the aligners. I have 0 time commitment. Whereas if I keep it in-house, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of creation. What's your counter to that argument?
Control. Control. Because we were even talking, I've got a new doctor that joined me when you were talking about bringing an associate, and I've always practiced by myself, but Lauren's been in our practice. She started as a patient, then worked all through college and through dental school. So she's been with us for about 8 years. And we were looking at a case, and I said, come here, you have to look at this. I said, because it's kind of like, how you can almost feel something. I'm like, to do this aligner setup, you have to touch this and feel this and see the subtleties of it. Where you outsource it, some of the things I don't even know that I can see or feel, how I would even communicate that with a setup tech, just the subtlety. So I think the control and the turnaround time. We turned one around, started they came in this morning, this afternoon they came in, and they're already set. They're already starting. So that's part of it. And here's the thing, when your time commitment is not as much as you would think. And even commitment, like when people say, start talking about printing and things, a lot of people in your office that have downtime can do it. Even front desk, it's so easy to teach someone to 3D print. We have a lot of kids that do it, the high school kid that wants a job for a couple hours, or somebody's kids that are, we don't do child labor or anything, but
well, I do. All my kids work in my practice, so I support it 100%.
See, perfect.
The only thing you need to ask is, can you play Mario Kart? Okay, you're designing ortho cases.
Yeah.
It's crazy how quick you can teach young people, like the high school
son
kid.
One day at the office printed a wallet.
Yeah.
Just got online. I was doing other things, and next thing I know, he came back.
Well, can you have him call me?
Yeah, he would put in RFID technology or something in yours. Like, Yours would come with some type of
You would come with an air tag.
Apple tag. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, I'm dying to know. I want to know this ultimate debond protocol. I want to see the beautiful workflow. I'm all about workflow systems and efficiency.
Well, I can give you a little bit, what in kind of years past before you could scan and print, you were taking brackets off, taking impressions, pouring things, and then we thought now we can digitally debond. And what we used to do before we had our new printer that's so fast is we'd have to scan before. We would take your wires out, we would scan, and then we could digitally remove the brackets. So you had to put in a software, remove them all, and then print them. And that was a step up from what we were doing before, because I take your brackets off, polish everything, and then seat it. But now, but that took time. And, if you're looking at efficiency and if you're looking at a busy practice, that was an appointment that take us 20, 30 minutes to do. And the tricky part is once you scanned, nothing could move after that. You couldn't lose a bracket, couldn't close a space, or things wouldn't fit. And digitally removing brackets is tricky when someone has some puffy gingiva or small teeth. You can't get it. So now what we do is we can do it all in one shot. So what happens is when you get there, I'll take your top brackets off, they'll scan, and they're going to start printing. We scan the bottom. We have a robotic bender that will bend lingual 3 to 3. So the robot's bending. Yeah, it's super cool.
That's cool.
We used to do them by hand. And, the tricky part is getting a wire that's completely passive in 3 planes of space. So when people are like, oh, I hate bonded retainers, part of it is probably when it was seated, it wasn't completely passive, because every time you're bending, you can be changing that. So bender is bending the little rope, the little 3 to 3 for us. Soon as that's down, that goes on, take off the bottom brackets. And by that time, the top retainer is set to go. So we've wrapped up a couple appointments all in one, about 30 minutes. And the thing is, why they're even, once the bender's done, we take our final records, you're done, and now you're out the door. So it's really saved a lot of time, and it's been really
I want to come visit.
Yeah. Anytime. We love having visitors.
Because I started doing straight wire in the, back in the early 90s. And so I've been doing ortho for a long time, but I am dying to see this workflow, because you actually have me all jazzed about what you just talked about, that workflow of the debracketing and debonding appointment. I love that.
One thing that's fun too, if you're doing ortho, is if you've ever dabbled in any indirect bonding, the Formlabs resin, and like I said, we've worked with companies, on some R&D for quite a few years, and by far the new resin that they have, it's not that new, it's probably a couple years old now, is super clear and really flexible. And so it's really easy to do indirect bonding. So we prefer to do indirect bonding and do that with most of our cases. And you'd be surprised the chair side, that time that takes. Someone scans, Hannah's putting on brackets. I look at them, maybe tweak it. The lab prints it, stick the brackets in, and like my chair time is so quick because I'm just.
Well, yeah, we actually tried that with a few labs back in the day. Taking a physical impression, having the labs, make the hash mark, set the bracket, and then pick it up in their vacuum form, and then send it to us. And inevitably, 2, 3, 4 of them wouldn't bond because they were too far away from the tooth, which made it an inaccurate bonded bracket anyway. But I'd be really curious to see that again, because I've really wanted to go back to that kind of a protocol, because it is such a time waster to have to go back, re-bracket a tooth, and then drop back to a lighter wire,
Well, hey, you've got my contact. Call me. I'll tell you what I know. Because there's some really nice software out there, and the trays are really simple to print.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking on like the platform we have now for our Formlabs, you can probably get maybe 7 or 8 patients on there because they're so small, and they print in, I think, about 25 minutes, because, clear material takes a little bit longer. But but the accuracy is there, and it's such a crystal clear material. But I know what you're talking about, the old way where you had stone models and they wouldn't stick. And so now with the way that the 3D printed one, there's such an accurate fit that you're going to see a really low bond failure rate. And there's just a lot of advantages to that too.
Can you talk about the your experience with tooth movement, thermoplastic versus printed aligners? Like, what are some of the pros and cons of like if you're looking at a case? Because I assume you do both. You do some printed resin, some like. What's your algorithm to say this is a case I'm going to do with thermoplastic? This is a case I'm going to do with printed resin. Pros and cons, and the algorithm of decision.
Yeah, part of it with direct print is really, really pretty new. There's, several systems out that you can do it. The one that's nice with the Formlabs printer, when you open it, you can use open source. So you can put any resin in there. And we tend to like the graphy resin is really clear. It's the clearest that we've seen. There's other resins out there too. But there's not, it hasn't completely replaced our workflow, because the other thing we do too with our ones that are thermoformed, we have an auto aligner cutter too. So we just stick it in and there's a little machine that cuts the aligner out for us. So that's our traditional method. So we utilize that technology. But what we're finding with the direct print is, particularly if you're looking like the shape memory, which is the graphy material, because you can warm it up to get it in and warm it up to get it out, you can put more movement into them. So if you're looking at a thermoform and you're going to maybe go 1.5 to 2 millimeters, if you're going with a flexible material that you can heat up, you maybe can go 4.5. So part of it's cutting down the number of aligners. Sometimes I'll do a setup just normal and then start cutting it down using graphy and think, okay, this will make it easier. So, what we're doing now is people that have a lot of crowding, where, an efficient way too, if you're going to try to dabble in some in-house aligners too, is like use upper aligners, but lower brackets on the bottom. Because, the tricky part when you're trying to align someone's lower teeth, if they're really crowded, you have to block out so much, you're so many aligners into it. So a lot of times we'll combine and use the liner on the top, brackets on the bottom. And I tell patients, when I can actually see the surface of your teeth, then we'll take these brackets off and we can go to a liner. They're like, I got it. It kind of makes sense to them. So some of those cases that we would have done hybrid with a liner on the top, bracket on the bottom, we're now being able to actually get an aligner to fit in using the shape memory. So people that are really crowded, people that have a lot of undercuts where there's maybe, a lot of perio, a lot of recession, or even just those kind of tapered shaped teeth, we're really pushing towards the shape memory material. So, but it's really new. And one thing I don't know about, and we're just starting to play with, is varying the thicknesses. And you can put even like a functional bite ramps in them. So if they're growing and you want to try to do some class 2 correction, you can then just build into that shell little wedges that can direct the bite. For deep bite cases, you can put bite turbo. So that's something we're just really starting to explore. So it's a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, it really is. And
are you doing combination stuff like MARPE and aligner therapy concurrently, or anything like that? That's really what so many, especially like in the sleep world, are talking about now, is actually fixing airways versus treating them for the rest of their life. So curious.
I haven't done any like that. I mean, I've looked at some of that, but I haven't. I can't, sorry. But it's a lot, there's a lot of things that you combine with aligner therapy, even, some of the surgical cases. But I'm sorry, I don't have any experience.
No, that's okay. I just,
we appreciate the honesty rather than just making something up. Yeah. But what I'm gathering is that there's not only a lot more to the methodology of whether you're gonna print, that's a certain, but are you gonna print the aligner? Are you gonna print the model? I have two questions that arise. One is, do you have any resources or recommend any resources that people could go to learn a little bit more about the plastics? Because I think that's something that's rather misunderstood. And I've gathered this from not only your conversation, but I've just been starting to learn that, especially if people want to start printing aligners or printing models for aligners in the practice, they need to understand plastics.
You know what? I wish I could tell you there's a really good source, but there's not. They're really, and for us, looking at different research articles and seeing what's out there, the problem, what happens, when you're looking at clinical research, is a lot of times by the time it goes through the entire review process and is printed, they don't even make that stuff anymore, or or they've changed the formula. So you've hit a hot button that is kind of on our list, and maybe I'll get to it now that I have someone helping me in the office of trying to put together a comparison. And some of the manufacturers do a nice job of putting it out there. But you're right, because sometimes people will say, well, how much movement can I do here, Lisa? I'm like, well, what plastic are you going to use? What thickness are you going to use? Are you going to direct print? And they're like, well, what do you mean? It's just not a lot. Particularly, some of my colleagues, if you were always used to just scanning and hitting the send button, you didn't realize there was a lot more thought in that.
Depends which alginate you're using.
Yeah. Well, something too, it's funny you said that, because sometimes people will they'll start to print and say, Lisa, it doesn't work. I couldn't even get this retainer to fit. And then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, here's the thing, your scan was too accurate compared to your alternate impression that you let sit there until someone poured it the next day. And even just someone teaching you, where do you block out an undercut before you make that, because your scan captures all that, where your alginate, after you pulled it out, you didn't have that. So there's a learning curve to it. And that's
the second question I have, because you said something earlier that fascinated me about how quick the print is. Is this a solid model or a hollow model?
Solid.
Holy crap.
Solid.
That's pretty
model.
impressive.
It is. It's the fastest one that we've got. And it does, sometimes when people say, oh, I can print a model that's really fast, but it's about like this tall. It's like the teeth only. You can't do anything. I'm like, well, that's really going to work. But it's what exports out of our software. And so, you've got the decent base on it that you can put into a vacuum form machine, and you can do whatever you need.
Yeah, that's the thing on a lot of them. Those bases, the hollow bases, they just fall apart when you try to do anything with them.
So it's completely solid, and that's printing. And that's printing at 100 microns. So, I mean, if you wanted to speed it up even more, you could go like 150 microns and probably not sense much of a difference. Fit-wise, it would fit just fine. But sometimes when you increase that layer thickness, you can start to see like a little ridge, because, you can.
I can't stand those ridges. I can't stand those ridges. Yeah. It drives me nuts. I'd rather the longer print and the less ridges.
Yeah.
So, no, I get it.
So you could, if you're desperate, you can speed it up. But
ruffles have ridges.
I don't even, dude. I can't do ruffles, man.
You just can't do it. Ridges, no.
I'm a Pringles or a Lay's guy. I'm sorry.
Obviously.
Yeah, end of story. Yeah.
Don't hate, Chad. Don't hate.
Yeah, can't do it.
As you can probably tell, it's really become a passion for us, learning to do this. And we really like, teaching and sharing it with people. And again, I always tell people, honest to God, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And, we were doing it before no one really knew how. Now it's just it's so intuitive. And it's not a huge investment. Before it was a huge investment. I always tell people too, if you have a scanner, you've made the big investment.
Yeah.
Now you got to use that scanner for everything you can think of, because that's the most expensive part. If you're, what you're paying for printers and the price of resins has come down. And it's
but
crazy.
it drives the ROI through the rest of the practice.
Mm-hmm.
The scanning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you, I certainly learned a lot tonight. So.
Well, thanks.
There's just so much more to do. Like every time you think you've hit some kind of.
I think we need a little mid-mark / Alvetro Orthodontics trip.
Oh,
that
road
would
trip.
be fun.
Yeah, maybe. I hate to say it. Maybe.
Hey, Josh,
guys. JB,
I'm yelling at the mid-mark guy across the street. I'll get him.
Hold on, I can't hear you. What did you say, Jeff?
I said maybe catch the Buckeyes.
Maybe catch the Buckeyes and buy a bunch of ruffles.
Yeah, and Funyuns for the road trip.
Funyuns for the road trip. I'm not riding with you guys if you're eating Funyuns. I'm not.
I'll work that. I'll yell at the mid-mark guy across the street.
JB, hint, it's not the smell going in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thanks. I can't unknow that now. Appreciate it.
Martha started it, not me.
I don't think Lisa wants you at her practice anymore.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say I was going to eat Funyuns and go to her practice.
Okay, fair. Fair.
Besides,
I love. Here's what I'll say, Lisa. Yes, if you can do it, anybody can do it. I say the same thing because I am a lot. Like, as you say your stories about, like, I can't turn off my phone and stuff, and I teach about technology all the time, and I'm like, I actually don't know how it works. I turn it on, and I know the things I need to do to get it to do the thing that I want it to do, and I'm persistent. But what I'll say about you that is, I've only known you for a short period of time, but the differentiator is you're persistently pursuing the ability to do it. And that is the thing that many of us lack or get stuck on or lose motivation or get frustrated or can't carve out enough time or whatever. So we need people like you to crack the code, push the envelope, move the profession forward, and then teach the rest of us how to do it so that we can do it more efficiently and more impactful. Because if we didn't have people like you, the rest of us would be fumbling around with these things for way too long. So you are different. I hope you can see that, because I know what it takes to crack the code a lot of times, and it's painful. I always show in my lectures my first custom tray impression, tray that I made my own custom tray. And it took me 6 hours of watching YouTube and designing it in Mesh Mixer, which is, a free design software, right? And watching YouTube videos and trying to figure it out. And I was like, it's the most expensive custom tray on the market today. I think you could buy a Tiffany's candlestick for less than what it cost me in time and energy to make this custom tray. I could have bought it from my lab for $20, right?
But it was the adventure.
But I did it because I wanted to do it, right? So please know what you're doing is so impactful for the rest of us, and we applaud you and we thank you very much for that.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well said. There's a huge intimidation factor for a lot of dentists about getting into this kind of technology. So yeah, 100% agree with what JB said. So thank you for putting yourself out there and letting people know, hey, this can be done.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being so kind. I appreciate that. And
we're going to have you back on.
Well, that would be fun. And
we're road tripping.
You can come visit me. You can come visit me. Yes. That would be fun. We love having visitors. We really do.
I want to see all these machines in action. And I want to see this gummy bear plastic.
And I'm putting the child lock on JB's window.
I'm just going to fly to you, Lisa. That's just the way it's going to be. I'm just going to fly.
The Dayton Airport. 30
minutes, it's killer, right?
Yeah. Dayton Airport's pretty tiny. Just get on I-75 and you'll be there before you know it.
That's perfect. Perfect.
Chad, you want to close us out?
Well, I will. But I think I'm going to close this out with something that JB said, because it was rather fascinating. I don't know if y'all realized that she used two P words together, and she said that she was persistently pursuing, I believe, were the two P words that she put together, which was
I could do three. Hold on. Passionately, persistently pursuing.
I've never heard persistently pursuing, but it's funny because I think JB and I were both trying to get the same message across as I was coming up with this close, is that here we've got a person that is so technologically advanced, but actually claims that she's not technologically savvy and has to ask her kids for advice. But what you're doing is you're really revolutionizing the future of orthodontics. You're playing a big part in that. You have played a big part in that for the past 15 years. I think there's a lot to learn. I certainly learned a lot this evening, and I know that our viewers did as well. I just want to thank you for your passion, and I'm going to tell you that you are a hell of a lot more technologically savvy than you ever would give yourself credit for. I mean, it was just there's so many things that you were talking about that just had all of us reeling. So thank you so much, and thank you to Formlabs. I'm excited to look into their products and see what they have to offer. It sounds like they're pretty innovative in the orthodontic space. So we look forward to having you back, and look forward to seeing what the future holds.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks.
Have a great
And
night.
keep persistently pursuing what you're doing.
I will. I like it.
Do it passionately.
Hey, do you think
do it
Sonia would
passionately,
like to
please.
be an educational sponsor?
What?
Do you
I
think
bet
we
they're
have
3D printed.
an educational
No.
sponsor?